Hi, welcome back to another episode of Nobody's Doing It Right, the podcast for those who are uncertain. My name is Kat, I'm your host, and today's episode we're going to be talking about being all in. This is for my fellow avoidance out there, fearful avoidance, dismissive avoidance, or anybody who just has like a fear of commitment, a fear of rejection, abandonment, all that kind of stuff, right? And who might tend to avoid being vulnerable with people, right? Because you fear being rejected or showing your soft underbelly to people that you might be intimidated by. You have to be all in order to expect others to be all in with you. Okay, so this is specifically for those of us who obviously want deep, fulfilling connections with people. You want someone to show you that they care about you. You want someone to tell you that they like you, that they're there for you, that they think you're great, right? You want all of that. I'm sure we all do. But you cannot expect that of somebody else, anybody else, right? You can't expect that energy in your life if you are unwilling to match it, right? If you're unwilling to also be that way with somebody that you care about, that you want, right? And I know it is scary for those of us who struggle with the fear of abandonment, the fear of rejection, who struggle with being vulnerable, to go out on a limb and tell somebody, this is how I feel about you. I care about you. I think you're great. You're so funny. You look so good. All that stuff that feels very vulnerable, that shows this person that they have, in a sense, and this is not necessarily true, but in a sense, it shows them that they have a power over you, right? That's kind of what might be the feeling within you, right? When you go out on a limb like this, it feels like they have this, you're showing them that they have power over you, right? But in reality, that's not what that is. That is a false narrative that your ego is creating, because all of this really ties into boundaries. When you are clear on your boundaries, when you really understand what your boundaries are and you trust yourself to uphold those boundaries, you're less scared to be vulnerable. And when you're less scared to be vulnerable, you're able to just show up and say what you mean and tell someone that you like them and you care about them without feeling like they're going to take advantage of you, because if they do, you're going to uphold your boundaries. And also because you create this sense of self-trust and self-worth and self-love that even if somebody doesn't match your energy, it doesn't hurt as much because you have shown yourself that you're there for yourself. But again, tying back to the title of this, you can't expect that energy if you're not willing to give it as well. You have to be willing to give it. So when someone says, I want this person to tell me first before I feel safe enough doing it. I don't want to be the person who's chasing. I don't want to chase. It's not chasing. Chasing does exist, right? Going after somebody. Someone has said no already and you're trying again. You're trying a new way. You're trying this. They're not meeting you halfway and you're still trying. You're pushing. Okay, then yes, you're chasing. But you telling someone how you feel with someone that is actually engaging with you is not chasing them. It is you being vulnerable, creating connection. And if someone can meet you halfway, amazing. Then that is the person for you. And if they can't, or if they don't want to because they are scared as well or whatever, then they're not the one for you, right? Like that, it's as simple as that. Not everything in life is simple, but some things are, and they can be if you want them to be, right? And this is one of them. But ultimately, the only way to weed out the people that are not meant for you in this way, that are not aligned with the vulnerability you want and the connection you want, is to be vulnerable yourself, is to be willing to put yourself out there and say, look, I like you. I think this about you. I think you're great. I missed you, or whatever vulnerable stuff that you're scared to say. That is a way of showing someone that you are all in. You're all in. Like, yeah, I want to do this. I want us to do this. It could be even in friendship too. It doesn't have to just be romantic relationships, right? Any kind of relationship that makes you feel vulnerable, to show up and be all in, to have both feet in, And this, of course, is very difficult for those who struggle with fearful avoidance or even dismissive avoidance. But as a fearful avoidant myself, I speak from that perspective. But it's easier to be 1 foot in, 1 foot out, right? To have 1 foot in, to be like, yeah, okay, I'm in, but I have 1 foot out so that if it goes belly up, or if this person shows a slight hint that makes me feel unsafe, I'm running. I'm heading out, right? So it's easier to do that when you have 1 foot out already, rather than being completely invested or committed to something. And that isn't to say that you should be all in no matter what, 100% of the time, without being mindful of whether this person is actually aligned with you, your values, your morals, right? Because in many instances, you might decide, I'm going to be all in with this person, but it might not be a person who's actually aligned with the kind of partner you want. So then you go all in and they act in ways that are completely unaligned with you, and you feel the disconnection there, and you attribute that to, oh, I shouldn't have been all in. That's the problem. It's like, no, it's not that that you were all in. It's that you were all in with the person that's not aligned with you, right? So it's important to also be mindful and have discernment of that as well. So boundaries, and also understanding who you are and what you actually want, not what is comfortable or familiar in terms of maybe patterns you've seen throughout your childhood. And also like not what you think you should want based on what somebody else says, right? Like, oh, this person has this kind of job, so this is the kind of person I should be trying to make it work with. But maybe they suck in other ways and they're just not right for you in other ways, right? That's okay. But you have to really, really, truly understand who you are and what you truly want in order to be all in with the right kind of person for you, right? Otherwise, you're going to be traumatized if you go all in and this person is completely unaligned with you. So understanding that you need to be mindful of yourself and your boundaries in order to be vulnerable, but vulnerability is necessary. You cannot avoid vulnerability in order to have a deep, meaningful connection with somebody. And I know it sucks. It's difficult. But there are many cases in my own life as well where I look back, and again, I don't like to look back and hold on to the past and the coulda, woulda, shouldas, but I look back and I look back at the behavior I had and try to change it now in the present. But in the past, there are many instances where I didn't tell somebody how I felt, or I didn't show up fully because I was worried about being rejected, or someone seeing something about me that they didn't like, and then therefore they would validate that I'm not good enough. It's like, it's not really about them at the end of the day, right? It's about you showing up for you in a way that is aligned with you. But if you don't know who you are and you don't know your boundaries, it's hard to show up in a way that's authentic. And when you don't show up authentically and someone rejects you for being the version of yourself that you thought you should be for them, that hurts even more. So it's then harder to even understand who you are and what you want. But I've looked back at things that I've done or haven't said or whatever, and I'm like, wow, I should have done that. Like I could have been a little bit more open just for me to show myself that, like, look, I tried at least. And that's what I think makes so many of us hold on to the regret of our past, right? That's that makes us hold on to the coulda, woulda, shouldas, is the looking back and realizing that you didn't even fully try. And it could have been something. Again, I don't like to hold on to that, right? If it was meant to be, it would have been, but you didn't even fully try. You didn't even show yourself that you believed you were worthy enough to try. It's not really about the other person ultimately, right? Like, yeah, they were great. If you did get into a relationship, it would have been wonderful or whatever. You don't know because it didn't happen, but you didn't even show yourself that you believed you were worthy of trying. And that's the hardest thing to reckon with. You didn't even see it in yourself. And that's so difficult. So it's important when you are looking towards relationships and thinking, okay, I want this person to be all in with me. I want to know for sure that they like me before I like them. It's like, no, get to know yourself. Do you like them? If you do, truly, not because you think you should or whatever superficial stuff is there, like truly, deeply, do you like this person? Are they aligned with you? Great. Tell them. Because you cannot expect them to do the same thing for you if you are unwilling to do it. And yeah, it does feel good when the person does it first, of course. But they're also maybe thinking the same thing, right? Like, we're all kind of our inner children, right? We're all the inner children within us that really want to be approved of and validated. I think it can be easy to look at somebody else that maybe we have put on a pedestal or we admire or we maybe are intimidated by and think that they are looking at the world or they're operating in the world as though they are super confident and super self-assured, and they know, like, most people don't feel that way. Even if they appear that way from the outside, they don't feel that way. They are their inner children too, operating and trying to find connection, trying to find approval and love. Some people do it better. Some people are more capable of being secure and acting in secure ways. Other people, act out of fear, and it is what it is, right? But everybody, I think, is operating from that place of our inner children, just wanting connection. And when you look at it that way, you change the perspective of this person is like, they need to tell me first because I don't want to put myself out there. Like, they're going to have they're going to have more power over me to know that I like them, and their ego is going to, really like that. It's like, let's look at it from the perspective of your inner child and their inner child are connecting. How would you want your inner child to be treated by somebody, right? Treat their inner child the same way, right? You can't have one without the other, and we are all mirrors of one another. So I think it's really important that if you want someone to be all in with you, you have to be all in too. You cannot have one foot out. Again, being mindful of your boundaries so that if someone does overstep them when you are all in, you know how to step back out, and it's fine. It's not a big deal. Oh, they crossed a boundary. They're not listening. They're not, they're not being aware of you. Okay, that's fine. I've learned. right? And you need to learn to have all the information. You need to take that, you need to be fully in to really get all the data that you need, right? You can't have all that information being 1 foot out as well. You're only getting half information. So yeah, have your boundaries. Know what your limits are. And if that person crosses it, if that person tries to take advantage of them, of course, leave, right? There's nothing wrong with that. Once you're all in, doesn't mean you have to be in forever, right? Of course, you want commitment. You want to be sure of yourself and sure of the other person that you're both in it together, of course. But if somebody is threatening you emotionally, physically, whatever, like you have to be there for yourself too, right? You have to be. But you have to also be willing to do the vulnerable stuff if you want it from somebody else. You cannot show up and expect somebody to give you something that you're unwilling to give to. We have to meet each other halfway. That's how life works. That's how relationships work. We have to balance each other out in many ways. Yeah. And it's a hard lesson. It's easier said than done. It's just a matter of practice, to be honest. Like practicing in small ways throughout your life. You know, telling someone that they look good, giving compliments that feel vulnerable, and showing yourself that it doesn't really matter what their response is to it, right? Obviously, you want someone to feel good and safe and comfortable, of course. You don't want to go do anything to make them uncomfortable. But it's not really about whether they think that they have power over you now or anything like that. It's just more like showing yourself that you think you're worthy of expressing yourself, right? And being okay with that. And it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. There's no shame in that, regardless of how that person reacts. That person might think now all of a sudden that their egos are, you know, oh, they have more power over you now or whatever. But that's not true. That's not true if you don't want it to be true. So yeah, I hope this was helpful. I hope it was informative and it gave you a different perspective. If you want to talk about this stuff in more detail with me, feel free to book a one-to-one call. You can subscribe to my Substack if you want to read the articles and essays I write about these things, or you can just follow me on social media. All the links will be in the show notes below, and I'll be back again soon with another episode.